Hi, I'm Jazz Obrecht, and welcome to my Talking Guitar podcast with the late, great Jeff Healey. The interview you're about to hear took place on May 24th, 1989. We cover a lot of ground in this hour-plus conversation, everything from his debut album to his appearances in the movie Roadhouse to our shared love for old blues and jazz 78s. Jeff offers fascinating insights into the innovations of Buddy Bolden and Louis Armstrong and the genius of Lonnie Johnson. As we get into the second half hour, you can hear some of Jeff's jazz records playing lightly in the background. This was actually my second interview with Jeff. Some months earlier, I'd done a profile of him in Guitar Player magazine. Jeff liked that article, so he sent me the working tapes for the Jeff Healey Band's debut album in progress and asked me to write the liner notes, which I was happy to do. As they were readying C to light for release, Jeff and I got together on the phone to do a cover story interview you're about to hear. I hope you enjoy it.
This must be Jazz.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
How you doing, Jeff?
Boy, am I glad we connected.
Well, it took a bit of doing, I suppose.
Yeah, how you doing?
Well, aside from being tired, not too bad.
Yeah. Well, I must say I'm pretty impressed with the movie, Jeff.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, have you heard it yet?
Yeah, I was out to it on its Toronto premiere here about a week ago, and came out pretty good. I'm happy with it.
You have come a long ways in a short while, my friend.
Yeah, I suppose there's been quite a few roads gone down since we spoke when I was in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I haven't changed very much, but aside from get a little thinner, maybe.
Yeah.
But, aside from that, I'm still doing the same thing as far as I'm concerned.
In terms of what?
Well, for example, I'm still sitting here sorting and listening to records. Which is, as you found out, is my major obsession in life.
Yeah.
And, still continuing to walk on stages and play. We're just going all over the world now as opposed to one country.
Has the reality of success matched what you might have imagined it to be?
I don't even know if this is what you call success. I mean, obviously it's success, but it's, we're not going to stop at this point, you know what I mean? There will come a day when all three of us, with our other interests in life, will probably back off from the performing aspect, for some time, or only do it for, say, 1/3 of the year or something like that. But this is the time to get out and barrage.
No kidding.
And that's what we're doing.
The film makes a point about what a terrible place the Double Deuce is, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst place you ever played? Do you remember?
Yeah. Well, there's a few. This band really hasn't, much as Tom might think, if you talk to him, that we played some bad places. I hate to sound like the seasoned veteran next to Tom, who's 12 years older than me, but I played worse places with other little organizations when I started out than this band ever went near. As did Joe, who worked, a lot in the Toronto and so forth area, and Northern Ontario, which I don't know if you know much about that, but it's pretty hick, Northern Ontario. There's one place in particular that I can think of. First of all, one of the first bar gigs that I did with a sort of a rock band, when I was 16, it was primarily a biker hangout. Place just outside of Toronto called Mississauga, Ontario.
Yeah, that's where Rick Emmett lives.
Yeah, that's right. Rick lives right out there, and there was fights in the back and so forth, but the people up at the front seemed to like the music, so that was cool enough. But it was pretty scary for, we're all, I think, about 16, 17, and we're all legally underage to be in the place, But I played in a couple places, where smashing and, all sorts of things. And I've seen a couple of those. But nothing. What the double deuce is every bad element you could ever imagine in the bar circuit all rolled into one place in one night. And that's what it was. I mean, there is not a bar around that I know of that's like that.
With the chicken wire and all that?
Chicken wire goes back a long time. I mean, if you spoke to all the guys one guy, you ever heard of Ronnie Hawkins?
Sure.
Yeah, well, Ronnie, of course, has lived up here for 30 years.
Right.
And he's a good friend of mine. And Ronnie, when he was working the South, when he was my age, 30-some years ago, that was just customary. They had to put the wire up there because he said they always threw beer bottles. If they threw empty ones, they liked you. And if they threw any bottle that had any amount of beer in them, they hated you because they don't waste their beer on anybody. And,
God, that is funny.
Yeah, so I mean, that happens.
Seems like you came pretty close to getting smacked with a bottle in the movie there.
We got hit. I don't know obviously what they showed, but they're all breakaway bottles. But no, I got smacked a few times. Well, I mean, we did several takes of it, and I got hit by the breakaway bottles a couple of times, and that's how it goes. It doesn't really hurt you.
Did you relate pretty closely to the character of Cody?
Well, as we discussed before, the character being written with this band and myself in mind, right off the top. Obviously, it was very close. It was suggested that maybe I just so it didn't get or look too easy or too whatever. If it just looked too net or too boring or whatever,
right,
that I might spruce it up a little bit with with a slight accent and maybe more hand gestures than I would do or something. But since then, I found myself making those same sort of hand gestures and things like that.
It's funny. It seems to me that you and Sam Elliott steal every scene either of you is in.
Well, Sam and I got along very well because neither of us really took or take Hollywood all that seriously. Not to belittle it, it is an art form in itself, but how people perceive it and the whole glitter and glamour behind it, we don't see it. We go in and we do our thing, and we do our job, and we go have a beer afterwards, I mean, it's another day down, and, everybody had fun.
Did you actually do any playing on the set?
To camera?
Yeah.
Or on the set?
On the set.
Yeah, it was customary for the lunch break. We would, because the way the thing would work is, as I might have discussed with you before, we'd show up at 7 in the morning, and we would work right through we would be there anyway till about 7 or 8 at night. And then, of course, when I talked to you, you caught me over at the recording studio after coming in from a day like that, And you could work anywhere from 1 minute to, several hours out of the day.
But you had to be there.
But you had to be there just in case the shot lined up and you were in it. So we were always there, and whenever lunch came around, we would have a quick bite of lunch, and then we'd run in and we'd just start jamming. Because they actually had big PA columns and so forth set up to look somewhat, real or professional or whatever. And they just put a mic through the playback system, and off we'd go. You'd have a little bit of vocal, and you get a couple other people up to sing and so forth. And it was a good way to raise the morale of everybody on the set. They got their own little concert of nothing serious, just jamming things. And that's how White Room came to be in the soundtrack. Actually, is we'd never played it together as a band. I'd played it with a band maybe 5 years ago. And I just said to Joe at one point, do you know how to play it? And he said, well, we'll try it. We just went through it, what we knew, and the rough performance convinced Joel Silver that it should be in the film. So he said, by that point, we had finished the album, we'd finished the movie, we thought we were out of the studio for good. And we just take the month of July and film. So he sent us back in the studio to record White Room, which we did.
Now, did you record all the album tracks at the? I'm sorry, all the Roadhouse tracks at the same time you recorded "See the Light" in the same place?
All the Roadhouse tracks were recorded through March and April, and then "See the Light" was recorded through May.
But you went in every day to the same studio?
No. The album was done over at the Complex. Part of the soundtrack was at the Complex. I'd have to go through a list of what was and what wasn't. Certain things, like When the Night Comes Falling, where the bed tracks were at the Complex, and all the auxiliary, the vocals, and all the added guitars, and Maria McKee and all that were over at American Studios. And we used American for a few things. And there was one other, Sunset Studios. We recorded things like Tore Down and Hoochie Coochie Man.
Now, there was no difference in the way you recorded, though. Was there?
What, between the album and the soundtrack?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, When the Night Comes Falling was the only tune that really went to town on overdubs. Everything else, for example, the other three tunes on the soundtrack album, Roadhouse Blues and Tore Down and Hoochie Coochie, were all done bass and lead guitar and drums and a reference vocal. I would just sing, basically we'd do a live performance. Then we would eliminate the reference because it would have leaking all over the place. And I would, let's see, on Torn Down and on Roadhouse, you can kind of hear a rhythm guitar in there.
Yeah, right.
Which I did. But that was done afterwards. I didn't do the rhythm with the bass and drums. I put that on after. And I do my vocal over again, isolated, so it didn't leak.
Who chose the material for the record, or the soundtrack album?
Combination of many people. Originally, it was looking like we might have 5 to 6 tunes on it. Then it came down to 5 with the 4 that you have, plus a tune that I wrote that's in the movie called One Foot on the Gravel. But without getting too technical, essentially what happened is we weren't entirely pleased with the performance. We felt that it could be better for the tune if it was going to be released properly. So we bumped it from the album. The other stuff we had nothing to do with, like the Bob Seger tune and Little Feet and Swayse.
The stuff you played in the movie, though, did like Jimmy Iovine tell you that that's what he wanted? Or?
No. He really, in all fairness to Jimmy, he we gave him a whole list of things that we wanted to do, or to try anyway. Plus, Joel Silver kicked in a couple ideas of what he wanted. Things like we'd never thought of doing Travel in Band or I'm on the Road Again. Not that we couldn't, we just hadn't thought of them.
Yeah.
And when they were suggested, among a whole bunch of, there was tunes that I don't even remember. A lot of things, even things like Elvis Presley's Mess of Blues and things like that. All sorts of stuff came out from all sorts of corners, and we just figured out what we would do, how it would what would be best for the band. Tom Petty suggested that we try When the Night Comes Falling from the Sky.
Right.
The other 3 tunes on the album are things that I suggested, or we as a band suggested doing. Roadhouse Blues was something that we had already been doing in our set occasionally, just, in playing bars in Canada. And the same with Hoochie Coochie Man. And I'm Torn Down was something I did, we did on occasion if we wanted to do a up-tempo blues. And I learned it originally from a Powder Blues album. They did it.
Powder Blues?
Powder Blues is a Canadian band out of Vancouver that unfortunately hasn't had a lot of success in the U.S., but they were very good.
What are your views on the fine art of covering songs? Do you feel like you have to compete with or improve the original?
I think as long as you do it, the song has to be comfortable to you. And as long as you put your own ideas or something different into it, so it comes out sounding like you, that's the main thing. For example, I'm on the Road Again. When it was suggested, what immediately sprung to my mind was a performance performance, I saw Ellen McElwain here in Toronto, who's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, great slide player.
She is.
Yeah.
And she did a version of I'm on the Road Again in a live show that I saw, which was just outstanding. And so if you listen, if you see the movie again, because unfortunately it wasn't released, but it's much tougher than what the canned heat version was. And I tried to do it because that's how she did it. It was a very, very tough and gritty and raunchy feel to it. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And so I kind of stole that idea, and I told her that anyway, and she was quite happy to hear that.
Are there tunes that you would not attempt to do a cover of, especially tunes in the blues vein?
I would try not to do things that have been done. For example, you'll never see this band record Stormy Monday Blues, because everybody else has, or something like that. I mean, doing Hoochie Coochie Man, something like that was done just because the tape was rolling and we were just fooling around, and everybody liked it enough. Now, had I had a choice beforehand, I might have said no, I don't want to record that because several people have done it. But that's where that logic can backfire on you. I mean, the performance came off very well, and it was worth releasing, so we did.
At what time in your musical development, Jeff, did you become aware of the deep appeal of blues music for you? Do you recall?
Probably somewhere in my mid-teens, as far as blues players and so forth, and figuring out the similarities to the music that I was listening to, which has mostly been a lot of jazz and things, but a lot of things like what I'm listening to right now is some barrel house piano from the late 20s.
Who's that playing?
What is this? I have to get the out. I think this is Romeo Nelson is what we're up to now.
Boy, that's some obscure stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's an album of piano players out of Chicago recordings from the mid-20s. Chicago and New York. There's a couple of Fats Waller things from the 20s.
I probably just bought a dozen albums in that vein. A lot of Meade Lux Lewis, Albert Hammond stuff.
I love that stuff.
Man.
And it's stuff like that. That's what I was getting to. That I grew up with a lot of that. Pete Johnson and even Count Basie and all that.
Yeah.
And when you listen to stuff like the more prominent like Muddy Waters and B.B. King and things like that, that's what they were listening to.
Yeah.
As well. And then people like Hendrix listened to what they were listening to plus them, and it just goes on and on and on. As long as people realize that.
Did you ever get the tape I sent of those Delta Blues?
I did. Yeah, I did. I also got, surprisingly enough, I can add further to that story for you. A buddy of mine in Atlanta, Bill Thompson, he knows the guy who bought up the test pressing, not bought them from the original garage sale, but who bought bits and pieces from that guy.
Right.
I'm trying to think of his name. George...
Not Gail Wardlow.
No.
Okay.
Anyway, this guy made a tape of the tests. Just, like I have a tape here of stuff that wasn't on that album that you put on the tape for me.
Oh, right, because it had been released elsewhere in the past. Yeah.
It was released in Sweden or something like that.
Yeah.
A bunch of things. But there's more stuff. There's some gospel things on there, and some more takes of things like Walkin' Blues and things like that. So that was wild.
That's pretty amazing.
It is.
I got another one I'll have to send you. It's the Robert Johnson outtakes, the ones that never got on the record. It comes by way of John Hammond Jr., whose dad was involved with the originals.
That's right, yeah.
Have you heard that?
Do you have the titles in front of you by any chance?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, these are the alternate takes of Ramblin', Come On In My Kitchen, Phonograph, Crossroads, Queen of Spades, Drunken Hearted, Stop Broke, Breaking Down, Love in Vain, and then Milk Cow's Calf Blues and Dust My Broom, which both came out on a record before.
That one I've got.
Oh man, that's some great stuff.
It is good. I got it on a tape. It came around third hand to a certain degree, but I have it guy in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Who's a blues collector, and I think he got a hold of that. They actually put them on an album. Eventually, they did. They put them just maybe in the last couple of years. They did come out on an album.
In your ramblings through early recordings of jazz and blues, have you found any real hidden treasures in terms of guys who played guitar? People who aren't really well known.
Oh, let me see. Not too much in the country blues because I regret that a lot of that stuff just didn't come out and still isn't being reissued all that well up here.
Yeah.
I picked up some things recently, like Buddy Boy Hawkins and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
I have some of that here. Trying to think of some jazz players that maybe. That's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that people tend to forget the serious impact that Lonnie Johnson's playing had in the late 20s on what people like B.B. King and so forth were doing.
Absolutely.
Which is, because B.B. is not a country player, as neither was Lonnie Johnson.
Yeah.
Much. It's sort of a blues and jazz mixture.
Yeah, definitely.
And
he was good enough to record with Eddie Lang,
Yeah, exactly. And the two of them did some wonderful records. And so I have a lot of his stuff.
Is that is the essence of your collection mostly pre-war?
Yeah.
I'm curious why, if that's your major focus, you tend to play in a very much post-war style of blues. Do you play
Probably because, pre-war stuff, as far as surviving and making any mark or money off of it, which is really when you're living in this world, you have to earn some money somehow. Not to say that I don't enjoy what I'm doing or what was done in post-war, but what I'm doing, I feel, and what was done by, such people as more modern day like Clapton and Hendrix and Beck and all that, has, if you wanted to really be technical and trace it back, it all goes back to, one link to another, back to that point.
Do you hear, what do you perceive as the difference between your electric blues style and blues playing at large right now? I hope that's a fair question to ask even. And to take it further...
At the moment, yeah. I think it's been commented by critics very nicely, I might add, that my playing is improving, which is why I commented to you before that I never wanted to sort of be as good as I'm going to be. I think of late, I finally, managed to get a handle on the real jazz approach when mixed with electric guitar and volume, and general, little nuances and little things and just little off-the-wall things, that you wouldn't expect to hear in a typical blues player.
So the jazz is creeping into the way you phrase?
Oh, very much so.
And the way you think?
Yeah. I don't class myself as, a guitar player. I'm a musician whose forte on their instrument, or most prominent instrument, is the guitar, but I dabble with lots of instruments and listen to lots of things and get ideas from all over the place. So, henceforth I'm a musician.
What's involved with maintaining your skill on guitar? Do you have to warm up or practice every day? Or
No, I'm probably the world's worst practicer.
What do you mean?
I never liked it. I never liked the word practice, which is why I quit piano lessons. And I never really practiced guitar. My practice came from sitting with a bunch of people, listening, and or sitting, by myself with records, and just first of all playing along with a particular somebody's solo, be it a guitar or a saxophone or whatever.
Right.
and then starting to work my own ideas into that, you know.
Huh. And yet, when you compose, though, I understand you do it completely by yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
Have you been doing much of that lately?
A little bit off and on. I haven't had a lot of time.
Yeah. What's your method of composing?
Just as soon as an idea that I like hits me, I'll sit down and put it into as complete a form as I can.
Do you usually get the beginning of a song while you're playing riffs, or do you get it in your mind when you don't have
It
an
happens
instrument?
in many different ways. I can just, I guess more often than not, it starts with a particular chord progression that I'll just be thinking of when I'm, walking along or riding along or whatever. I work better without the guitar initially.
Do you sing things then to yourself?
That or just hear something and and visualize, if you will, something in my mind. Hold on a second.
Yeah. What?
All right.
Good time to talk?
Yeah. No, I was just clearing up something downstairs there.
Do you ever feel that your guitar and voice become the same instrument?
Sometimes. Not very much. But on occasion, I find myself unconsciously copying what I'm doing, chord-wise with my voice.
Really?
Because I also did a lot of work as a, your sort of guitar strummer and singer as well, which is when you really blend the two together.
When do you feel you play your absolute best?
Under pressure.
Really?
With a lot of people who are supposed to be, major league people, or for example, we played a week ago the Pink Pop Festival in Holland to like 45,000 people, and that was quite a rush.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So something like that, is when I really sort of wake up and go for it.
Does the audience affect you much? The energy?
Oh yeah, I mean that has a lot to do with it. But we've been very fortunate to get quite good audiences for the extended tour of this album.
Now you've toured so far in Europe. Have you been to Japan?
We're going in 2 weeks.
Have you noticed any differences in audiences from place to place? Like places where it's...
I will say that in relation to North Americans, that the European audiences are generally, they're polite and enthusiastic at the same time. North American, and I include U.S. and Canada equally in there, can vary from place to place, but essentially, let's face it, we see it all. I mean, we see everything come down here, and so we're very picky. We can sort of treat a concert like a social event. Whereas you'll find that in Europe, when they go to see you and they sit and they listen, and at the end of the tune and between tunes, they're very loud and appreciative, and they're quite something.
Yeah.
That's not to say that the North American audiences, are unappreciative, but that's just the way that we are. That's the way we were brought up.
How do you like being on the road? Is it as terrible as...
For the most part, it's okay. I could use some time, maybe a little more time than what we get to just relax. And the only way I can relax is in my apartment.
At Toronto?
We've had days off offered to us, in the middle of tours on the road, and I've said, well, I'd rather not, because we're in the middle of some place where it's going to be hard to get home for only 2 or 3 days. And if I'm out, I'd rather be out and working with maybe a day off every 4 or 5 to just, to travel or to relax. But for extended relaxed periods, 3 days and up, I'm only comfortable in my own space.
That's cool. Do you care about reviews or the press coverages you get when you're touring? Or do you even hear about them?
I hear some. I get all of them eventually sent to me. And I have, I just keep them on file here just out of interest. And, I laugh at certain things, and, I have my opinions of certain things. But essentially, I think everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
And if somebody didn't like the show, then for God's sake, say you didn't like the show. You know,
Yeah.
because that's the only honest way to be. Because you can't please everybody.
That's true.
Um,
Do you get burnt out on interviews?
yeah, on occasion, because, you know, I mean, an interview like this is a lot different because you and I have already covered the preliminaries. But believe me, between the months of October and, well, just now getting back from Europe, I have easily done somewhere between 600 and 700 interviews.
Oh my God.
Dealing with basically the same stuff.
What's the most annoying questions you've heard over and over? I'm just curious.
It usually has to do with, well, because Europeans don't understand the lyrics,
Yeah.
then they immediately assimilate See the Light with being an irony to being blind, because they haven't listened to what the song is actually all about. And, you know, you have to try and explain that has nothing to do with that. And usually, you know, I'm able to be pretty funny about it.
Or how about the one that your hearing's better than anyone else?
Oh, that happens a lot, but I used to get that all through my life, so
Yeah.
I'd already had an answer for that. You know, that's just something that you either develop or you don't. It's a matter of choice.
I know you've probably been asked this to death, but I think our readers are going to really want to know how you conceptualize the guitar neck. Could you describe that for me briefly?
I've never really thought about it. Essentially, with it just being, you know, flat with all the 6 strings across, and I have my ideas of chord shapes for the most part. But you know, it's sort of when the hand lands on the neck is when things go into action, and outside of that, take me away from the neck, and I really don't think about it too much.
Do you understand things in terms of positions and blues scales, or that never comes into it while you're actually playing?
It never comes into it while I'm playing.
I
studied it.
You did?
Yeah, but I also learned to separate it from performance.
What's the extent of your musical knowledge, and theoretically speaking?
I have my certificate in grade 3 theory, which is harmony and arranging.
Was that from high school?
No, that was taken privately when I was in high school, but it had no connection with the high school I went to.
What's the reach you have on a guitar? Let's say your hand's at the 5th fret. How far up could you hit with your thumb?
Well, I can probably. I mean, you know that the frets get smaller as you go up.
Right, right.
But I think I could probably stretch a full, 12 frets.
An octave.
From the thumb to a little finger on one string.
Yeah. How from where on the neck though?
Just about from anywhere. I mean, if I was to put the little finger, say, on the E string, put it on the first fret, being the F.
Yeah.
I might make it to the next E.
No kidding.
But, you know, getting up into, like, if I go from a B on that same E string, I can slide up to a B without any problem.
You must be pretty tall then.
I'm 6'2".
And have a big stretch, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have very big hands, for starters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you bar with all 5 fingers in the movie. Is that the way you usually do it?
I don't really bar at all. I use maybe one finger that will take care of 2 strings at once. Say, in your say an A bar chord, the A string and the D string are holding down an E note and an A note,
right,
respectively. So I'll usually just grab those with the thumb, for example, or if I do an A sharp 9, 7 with sharp 9. There you're using the B and E strings with on a C and a G, right? So I'll use, I'll just put my index finger across both those strings, stretch it up that way. But I don't really bar anything. I mean, all the fingers sort of have their place.
You have some pretty unusual bends as well. Seems like you tend to bend on the lower notes, lower pitch bends more than the average guy.
Probably just from wanting to hear that. I've started to do it even more now because I felt that I was doing the sort of the stereotype, bending way up in the upper ranges of the guitar. But I like hearing lower bends on the lower strings.
If you had a kid who wanted to play guitar, which way would you teach him?
Well, the only way that I know.
Yeah.
But that's not to say it's the only way or the right way.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's what you're comfortable with. It's the reason why people like Hendrix and McCartney, who are right-handed people, played left-handed, because they just felt comfortable that way.
I always thought Hendrix was left-handed.
I think he was supposed to be right-handed. I might be wrong, but I think he was.
Huh.
Which was, one of the reasons why it was strange that he, I think I'd heard it or read it somewhere in an interview that his dad said he was right-handed.
Interesting. Have you become aware of any other players trying to learn your style?
No. Some guy in San Francisco said that he'd been playing that way for years, and he was glad to see somebody else who was doing it. But I never saw him play.
Are there any tips you could offer someone who wanted to try it? Maybe it's a simple exercise to help them get started or something?
No, it's something that, I worked it out by ear originally.
Right.
And from, ear and just general musical knowledge on what worked together.
Do you use the tremolo bar much, Jeff?
A little bit. Not as much as I used to, but I'll use it for certain effect.
Is yours rigged up to go up or down, or does it just go down?
No, it just goes down.
It's like
not a floating.
It's like a Fender type bridge?
Yeah, and I tighten it right to the body.
We were trying to get permission actually to run the solo for See the Light, and we've already transcribed it and everything. And the fellow who transcribed it asked me to please ask you at the end of towards the end of the second chorus, he said there's these crying bends, and he wondered if they were done with a bar or with your fingers.
No, I didn't use. The only time I used the bar for that was in the loud blowout stuff at the end.
Of the song?
Yeah, when the drums and the bass and all the guitars are just going nuts.
Yeah.
That's when I used the bar, but for the rest of it, it was all with the fingers.
Have you appeared on recordings besides the two that are becoming hits right now? The two albums?
We did our own independent single, which has been out of print.
Was that See the Light?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which you heard about. And as far as what was released, there was an album that only came out in Canada, to my knowledge, by Matt Minglewood.
Matt?
Band.
I'm sorry?
Matt Minglewood.
Minglewood.
You ever heard of the Minglewood Band?
No.
They're out of the East Coast of Canada, and they're a great band. Matt's a good guy and a good guitar player and songwriter and so forth. His problem is that he does, anything from country to blues and rock and roll, all on the same record. Tends to really screw up people's perception, and people like me get a great kick out of the albums. They're wonderful, but he asked me in to play on a particular tune for the last album that came out a year ago.
Yeah. Do you have any things in the can for your next album?
Not that's recorded, no.
No? Do you have any ideas of new directions you might want to explore?
No, not specifically. Except that, I think with the band being another year down the road and a year of, multicultural touring and live performances and so forth, you're going to see a maturity in the band without even having to work at it.
Are you still self-managing?
Yes.
What's the concept behind that?
Well, we're still very comfortable doing what we do. We have people that work for us. We have an office staff who, takes care of the fort here in Toronto. And
that's Fort Records, right?
Forte Records.
Forte.
Yeah. And we have a tour manager with us now all the time and all that, But it's us that are still sort of making the decisions out on the front line.
Yeah. What has experience taught you about getting your best guitar sound on tape? Do you have any
Just to keep experimenting.
Yeah?
Because, it depends on the song, too. and the feel of the song as to how you record. I mean, I wouldn't have recorded, say, the solo for That's What They Say the same way or with the same ambiance as what I did the solo for, say, Confidence Man or My Little Girl.
Right.
You know, with things like that, with the latter two tunes, there was just mics strung all over one great big room.
Right.
And the amp turned up louder than the normal live performance level.
Yeah.
And then just, let loose. And, things like That's What They Say were much more, much mellower.
What are the essential ingredients in your tone? Like, what's the minimum setup you'd be comfortable playing on stage with or recording with?
An overdrive, an equalizer, and a flanger.
That's your usual setup, isn't it?
I've added a couple since then, but that's the primary pedals that I use.
That's a Tokai overdrive?
I've changed over to DOD approached me and said, we'd like you to try some of these pedals. And, being one to try anything once, I plugged in, they gave me this rack of things. And I plugged it in, and it works very well for me for the time being.
Does it have stuff besides overdrive?
It has what they call a rock and roll pedal, which is a further sort of gritty overdrive if I really want to kick in, a lot of noise.
Yeah.
It has the equalizer. It has a delay pedal on it, which I use maybe, for a few seconds out of every show. But at least it's there for effect. And it has an octaver on it, which I use, for a little bit of each show.
The old Hendrix type thing?
Yeah, something like that.
Gives you the octave higher usually?
No, it's an octave lower.
Interesting. Where would you use something like that?
It varies. It's just sort of spur of the moment thing.
Yeah.
I might, kick it in for something for effect. Usually on a very, on a slow blues and a very dynamically quiet part, I might use it.
Do you have a wah-wah with you usually?
I do now. I wasn't using one at that point, but they gave me one of theirs, which they wanted me to try, and it does the job quite well. Considering I only use it for See the Light anyway. So.
Are you using all DOD then?
At the moment.
Have you had any temptation to go totally high-tech into multi-effects units and stuff?
No.
No? How about guitar synthesis?
No, not really.
Uh-huh.
I appreciate what people do with them, but it wouldn't really fit the style of this band at the moment.
Yeah.
And it would be something that if I went into that, I would need a few months to try it out in places and play with it. But I don't have that time right now.
Have you upgraded your guitars at all since?
No.
You're still using the same ones?
Yeah.
Can you get everything you want from one of them?
Yes, from a black Squire Strat that I have, which is my favorite.
That has the Canadian-made pickups in it, right?
Right, they all do now, but that's just sort of the guitar that I like the most.
I've seen photos of you with looks like a Grover Jackson double neck.
Yes.
What's the story on that thing?
Oh, I bought that, I guess I didn't mention that to you. I bought that in Los Angeles just the day that I left. And I was looking for a double neck just for a couple of tunes for the show, and found that and liked it, and I bought it. It's got excellent action for the 12-string end.
Interesting. What's your main amps now?
Same, Marshalls.
Marshalls. How do you have them set when you go on stage?
At a very clean sound, so that I can, I have all the auxiliary things at my feet. It doesn't come on strong and just get stronger. It comes on at a very clean sound. And, the equalizer is for the very slight boost in tone and volume.
Right.
And, everything else, as I say, just added on to that sort of does their job.
Do you use wireless ever?
I just started back in February. Well, actually, I rigged up a wireless pack that I put on my belt and got a long enough cord to go from it so that I could play around with it. And now wireless implants in my guitars. So I have no chords that come out of the guitar at all now.
What's the appeal of using the giant triangle pick versus a something smaller?
Personal preference.
Yeah.
It's just been comfortable for me. I used to use back when I was a kid, all that I ever used was the thumb pick.
Yeah.
And, I never liked the smaller picks at all. A smaller little triangle. But somebody left one of these big triangles on a stage that I was playing when I was about 13. And my dad just gave it to me after the show just to say, look at this, this is funny. And I used it, I tried it, and I felt very comfortable with it. So I continued to use them and started buying them.
You and Carlos Santana.
Yeah, apparently I didn't know that he used those.
And Richie Havens.
Oh, does he?
Yeah. Cliff Gallup, who played with Gene Vincent, used one.
That's.
And he used finger picks with it on his middle and ring finger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for sending the one we used on the poster.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yeah,
that was a thrill.
It was a thrashed up pick, too, and looked really good.
Yeah, it knocked a lot of people out up here. A lot of my friends and so forth, guitar players who...
Oh, with the poster?
Yeah, because they picked it up and said, wow, I recognize that pick.
Yeah. I'm so happy we're doing this cover with you, Jeff. You certainly deserve it.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Have any of the technical advances in aiding blind people been of any substantial help to you?
Like what?
I don't know. Yeah, you'd think technology advancing so fast with computers and everything else. I wonder if there's anything that has impacted your life.
I haven't had much chance to deal with it.
Yeah.
In the last, 3 years. There is a computer out now that I would like to look into when I get the time.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of getting the time.
Yeah.
Primarily I'd like to get it to store this whole collection sitting in my apartment here on computer.
Your albums?
And 78s and the whole bit.
I have a suggestion for you with the album, something I just did. I contacted Yazoo Records, Origin of Jazz Library, and all the great reissue labels,
right,
and cut a deal for their whole catalog. And Yazoo sold me 79 albums for under $300.
Did they really?
Origin and Jazz sold me everything they had for $2.50 a piece.
Wow. And
this is it, Jeff. This is the deepest. Some of the deepest stuff you're likely to find.
Oh, yeah. No, they do.
And I wanted everything, I've been putting together tapes of, I have 4 one-hour tapes in 1929 music and 5 one-hour tapes in 1930 music, gospel and blues and jazz. And
right.
It's really been an educational experience, I must say.
Oh, yeah, I can believe it.
But I'll bet if you contacted any of those guys, they'd be happy to get you everything.
At some point, I'd like to get into that. I'm starting to get to work with the Bluebird, the Bluebird.
That's a little bit later.
No, but I'm talking about Bluebird now through BMG is they're back doing reissue
right
digitally.
Oh yeah.
And Oren Keepnews, who's he's been doing transfers and reissues
forever
and took care of Riverside all throughout its
right
history and so forth. Well, he's working with them now. He's a good friend of mine. And so I'm starting to, I just did a little work on a Django Reinhardt project that they're doing. I did some scouting for them when I was in England for some stuff, which I got.
78s?
Metals. They deal strictly off of the metal for the most part. Metal if they can get it.
Right.
Or a test pressing. What I ended up doing is finding some missing metals for sessions that they wanted to issue. I found in England in EMI's vault.
Yeah.
And I had them pressed to vinyl and then shipped out to New York.
How interesting. How did you get access to the EMI vaults?
A phone call. It was much easier than you'd think.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was quite something. I also made a few, they own all the, what they have left anyway. They have all the OK stuff that came out on Parlophone.
Wow.
There. So I had, just for interest, I had 3 Armstrong sides that have eluded me for some time that I found in metal pressed up.
Did I read somewhere that you claimed Louis Armstrong was the most innovative musician of the century?
For the art of improvisation, yes. With being the first, you really can't go back any further than Armstrong for what he did.
I would sure love to have heard a recording of Buddy Bolden.
It would have been nice, except that we can only imagine from listening to people like Buck Johnson and King Oliver, who were great in their own right.
Right.
Their ideas or improvised ideas, which they didn't really do very much. I mean, their improvisation, so to speak, on a tune was something they set down and played it the same way each time.
Yeah.
Hence the Alphonse Picou clarinet solo on High Society, or at least what he was allegedly rumored to play back in 1902.
Yeah. Which
clarinet players learned note for note from then on up until now, and still play if ever you hear a clarinet in the New Orleans tune High Society. So little things like that, which is what came out of there. But Armstrong, especially during the 1928 period, where the Ohioans just set the general musical or musicians, I guess, more than anybody else, on their ears with what he did and his seemingly limitless idea flow.
If you could go back in time, Jeff, and listen to or sit in with any musician, who would spring to mind as people you'd be interested in?
Well, Armstrong first and foremost. I'd love to have done that. I did get a chance to sit in with B.B. King in Berlin.
Can't go wrong with that.
I've never had such a thrill in my life. I think that was very close to what I imagined, something like Armstrong being on stage with somebody like that.
Wow.
But, there's lots of people I would have loved to just heard live. Armstrong, Jack Teagarden for his tone, which, nobody else came close to. I mean, there's trombone players and then there's Jack Teagarden.
Absolutely.
Let me see. Can you hold on a second?
Sure.
All right. No problem.
Yeah.
I'd like to get the chance to meet and sit in with Stefan Grappelli at some point.
Oh, wow.
Who's still playing.
Oh, yeah. Do you play music when you're by yourself that would surprise those who only know you from your recordings or concerts?
Well, most people are surprised by what I listen to anyway.
Yeah.
Enjoying, studio band stuff, for example, which might have very minimal jazz content, if any, in it.
Uh-huh.
But just listening to, a stock arrangement of something from the late 20s, early 30s or something like that, played by studio musicians who are just reading a chart.
Yeah.
I collect that and I like that a lot.
How do you index your collection?
The albums, of course, are all alphabetically done with all the compilations being put at the end. And the 78s are, once again, categorically and alphabetically.
Can you find something instantly? I mean,
for the most part, not if it's. It might take me a little while to think of where I put, say, just a studio band record of something that I play very, very little. But all the good stuff, all the jazz and things like that, I know exactly where that is.
Is it like Braille coded?
No, I have an idea where it's all at, and for whatever reason, I have never figured out, been able to identify, records that I have a lot of contact with without too much problem.
Huh. That's interesting. Do you can you think of anything else that we should include in this cover story interview? or anything you want to say?
Between what you've done and what we've done today, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Okay, that sounds great. Did you get photographed today?
I'm about to in about half an hour.
Oh, great. We have some really great stuff for the inside.
Oh, do you?
From the Roadhouse sessions, and different people have sent from live shows, but we want that real special shot for the cover.
Well, Gmo's the guy for it.
Oh, you've worked with him?
Yeah, I've met him a few times at, little things around town, and he's photographed us on a few things for industry, things up here.
Would you like me to? My girlfriend is very much connected with blues labels. Would you like me to have her send a list of addresses where you can inquire if you ever want to buy a catalog from a company?
Sure.
Like the Yazoo and OJL and Testament and all that?
Yeah. That would be interesting. I can at least get them to send me, send an actual catalog so I can peruse it and see what's in there.
Yeah.
To make it worth the while.
Yeah, I found it, I bought them one at a time, and then I just thought, boy, I want everything, so I...
Well, that's it. Like, I think I have a few Yazoos around here.
Yeah.
Without, and at one point I did deal with a guy who dealt with them, but, for whatever reason, that connection sort of went by the wayside.
Wolf Records over in Germany and Document are putting out some real interesting ones.
Yeah. I've seen some Wolves.
Yeah.
While in Germany, for that matter. And they're also doing in Europe a lot of very interesting CD compilations.
Really?
A lot of interesting things coming out. That there's one. I think the best one that I found, as far as let's be honest, and forget any filtering or eliminating of any noise or anything like that. There's a Bessie Smith where they've picked probably, I would say, even in my own opinion, the best stuff from around 1925 up to the last session.
Talking about the French one?
It might be French. Either
20
French
cuts?
French or Japanese or something like that. Anyway, it's great because what they've done, by the sounds of it, is they've just taken a digital reading from somebody's player. They've just played the record, and you get it with a little bit of hiss before the record and a little bit after, so you've heard the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's like putting on the actual record in your house.
I know, it's wonderful.
And I like that as long as it's done, tastefully. I mean, I'm used to 78 hiss. There's no way you can recapture on an album perfectly or on a transfer the sort of magical feeling of even like a Pick Spider back in his gang or something, record like that, or an Armstrong or something.
Yeah.
You get it off the original 78, that's as good as you're going to get it.
Right.
As long as the 78's in good shape.
Well, if there's ever any records you're looking for, holy grails, Jeff, let me know, and I'll
let you know when I've been trying for the last 3 years to get this Armstrong project together. And I'm really no further, well, that's not true. I've got a few things added, little gaps that I was missing. But I'm not too much further along than a year ago when I talked to you.
You trying to do the complete Louis from the 20s?
From the King Oliver up until the last OK session.
Oh, man.
With everything. I mean, all alternate takes of all the Henderson things. And there's all sorts of weird stuff that comes up. There was an alternate of a particular Fletcher Henderson track on an album that I got from a guy in Germany, which nobody knew that this existed, to my knowledge. I mean, I brought it up here and I played it for some collectors, and they had no idea that it's not listed as being issued ever. There's no that take number does not exist, and it is completely different than the most common one that we found.
Is that Jazz Records book trustable?
Oh, Rust?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
In as much as what he has, because he's honest. he'll always put question marks before whoever, if he doesn't know for sure who it was playing what. Anything, as he explains in the start of the book, anything that is put down, like if it says October 13th, 1928, without a circa before it, without a C, it means it's from October 13th, and he has his sources to prove that. So no, it's that, and to just a slightly lesser extent, because it's an older edition, the dance band book is sort of the Bibles to us collectors.
Have you got the new A through K of the electric blues records? Post-war?
No, I don't.
They redid the Godrich Dixon tome.
Oh, did they?
It's coming out in 2 volumes now. I just bought the first volume, which was $85, most I ever spent on a book in my life.
Yeah, well, that's it. Books like that will run you a lot of money.
But what the hell? It's far more exhaustive than the first version.
That's incredible. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I got it from Down Home Records. I called them up and they just shipped it UPS to me.
All
Put it
right.
on my credit card.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's totally cool. I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I would like to. I'd like to look into that.
I teach college courses in blues history, so I need to keep all that stuff handy.
Oh, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't
I
realize
have
that.
for years. Yeah, I have. I lecture in early blues. It starts in July. Most of my students are my dad's age.
Right.
And they get tears in their eyes when they see a film of Georgia Tom or they see Bessie Smith. And,
Wow.
it's pretty electrifying. I feel very lucky to be able to do it.
Have you got all the Bessie Smith stuff? For example, the 5 double record sets
Yes.
from CBS and all
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Yeah. Have you got the, I've only seen it on an Italian issued album, but there were alternates to, a few things. What is on this album here? I think there's definitely the alternates to Nashville Woman Blues and Careless Love.
Really?
That's why I bought the album, because they're Armstrong things. And there's an alternate to Muddy Water. And,
No kidding. Was there an alternate Moan You Moaners? That was
Not
paired
that
up.
I've ever seen. It's highly possible. I would have to take a look. I don't think all the alternates to the CBS stuff have been issued.
Yeah, I
Yes,
doubt it.
I would have to take a look in Rust and just sort of check off.
Have you ever heard Lottie Kimbrough?
Who's that?
Lottie Kimbrough. She's a country blues singer from the 20s. Stands reissued on the Testament, on the Document label.
I don't think so.
She was a real revelation to me out of all the records I've gotten recently. Just an incredible voice. If you like Bessie Smith, you'll really find her interesting. I'll be happy to throw a cassette of her together if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some of that.
She knocked me out. Knocked me out.
That'd be wild.
Yeah. Well, I think I've covered what I'm looking for, Jeff.
Okay, well, that's great. I'm off to get my picture shot.
Okay. And then you're off
relax, because we're heading out tomorrow back to the
Japan?
back to the U.S.
Oh, and then you go to Japan after that.
in the middle of June, and then Australia for a few days and all that sort of thing.
When's the next album start?
Hopefully in September
Cool.
at this point.
Well, I hope to catch your show next time through.
Yeah, we're doing 3 California dates. We're doing San Juan, Capistrano,
Uh-huh.
of all places, and San Diego.
Cool.
And that's around the...
San Juan or San Jose?
No, San Juan. We've
Yeah,
already been to San Jose.
yeah.
I think. Were we up in San Jose, or was that... No, it was blown out, but I've driven there. We were there.
Yeah. Well, next time you're through, I hope we can get together and have a meal or something.
Sure. Whereabouts are you living at?
San Jose,
You're in San Jose.
which is near San Francisco.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So if I get down that way, we did the Fillmore
You're right.
in, middle of March.
Yeah, I was down in L.A. at the time.
That was wild. It was great.
Good show, I heard.
Oh, thank you. Well, we were pretty tired. It worked out. Anyway, I got to let you go. I got my other line beeping here again.
Okay, thanks a million, Jeff.
All right, Jazz.
Take care.
Of yourself, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This concludes my 1989 interview with Jeff Healey. As many fans know, Jeff was a passionate collector of jazz 78s, and the following year he'd begin hosting a jazz radio program at the University of Toronto. Be sure to check out some videos of Jeff on YouTube to watch his unusual technique of holding the guitar in his lap and playing overhand with his thumb doing a lot of the work. If you're interested in hearing more interviews with Jeff, please let us know in the comments section below. And if you're into 80s guitars, there's a lot more interviews on my Talking Guitar YouTube channel. Before signing off, I want to thank my producer and engineer, Nick Hunt. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you next time.